I've been doing a lot of album reviews lately, and I thought it was time to switch things up, do something a bit different, and hit you out with a really random list idea that I came up with yesterday. Hopefully you dig it and enjoy the concept of what I'm doing here. I've not done a list in like a year or something. I mean, the last list I probably did was like the year-end lists or the mid-year lists, but I did used to do quite a few lists last year and the year before, so I thought I'd bring them back. This one's going to be late night listening albums. Pretty straightforward albums that are perfect for that dark late evening chilling out time period where you don't want to have something too heavy. You maybe just had a really long hard day at work, you want something to just kind of soothe you. Yeah, it's pretty much it. Starting off with the first pick, these aren't in any particular order, but this one was what inspired my idea for the list, and it is Masakatsu Takagi's Wolf Children soundtrack. An album that I realised I only really play at nighttime. It's only an album I ever play at nighttime, and the one time I played it in the morning, it wasn't as good. I'm not lying to you, man. It wasn't as an enjoyable experience as when I shoved that on right before bedtime. It's just not the same. It's like some albums are perfect for certain environments, certain moods, and this is one of them. It is just the best thing to play when it's really dark. Masakatsu Takagi's music is just so peaceful in general. You could say any of his albums, to be honest, and it would be perfect for this list. But this one in particular is just so beautiful. The pianos on here are just so soft. The vocals are quite rare on the album, but when they come in, they're just very delicate. They're just so odd as well. He has a really weird like kind of like inflection in his voice, but it just matches perfectly, man. And the final track on here is just wonderful. Easily one of my favorite songs of the decade period, and honestly, even if you weren't to play this at nighttime, you've just got to play this before the decade's over. I mean, I haven't even seen the film, but this is easily in the talks for best albums of the decade. It is just that good, so please check this out, and preferably check it out at nighttime. Next on the list, Radio Department. I still don't know why they're called the Radio Department. Gotta be one of the worst band names for a band that's just as good as they are, because Lesser Matters is, I think, their best album. Their 2010 album, Clinging to a Scheme, is great as well. Some of the best songs appear on the album, but this album is just, again, perfect for that late night experience. They blend elements of shoegaze with indie pop, and it just makes for a really lovely sound. The vocalist has just one of those inviting, soft voices that you can't say no to. And similarly, with the last album I mentioned, this album got better for me when I played it late at night as well. I don't know what it is about it, but just something calls me when it gets late and I'm like, what do I want to listen to? Radio Department. They just have the perfect sound for that vibe, and I can't quite place what it is, but hopefully you get that same feeling from them as well. Next, I'm going to go Anathema with Weather Systems, a prog rock album from 2012, another album that could easily be in the conversation for best of the decade. It is really that good, and generally prog rock can be a bit of a tricky one for me personally. I do like prog rock, like overall, but I often struggle with it. But usually what works for me the best is when the arrangements in a prog rock song can be incredibly beautiful, and I feel like Anathema just have that locked in. They're quite intoxicating at times too. They have this whirlwind type sound to them. It's very odd, but the vocals match perfectly together. I could imagine people thinking the vocals can be quite cheesy, but for me, I think it matches what they go for extremely well, and the guitar tones are just so on point that it just makes for a really strong listen late at night. Next on the list, my girl Regina Spektor, of course. How could I not mention her with the album Songs, possibly her most stripped back and just, I guess, barest album that she's ever put out. Very early in her career, she had songs that were re-recorded later on future albums like Begin to Hope, but these stripped down versions, man, they highlight the best qualities that we've ever really heard and seen in Regina Spektor. And Songs is just wonderful for the vocal performances. Like seriously, just listening to her sing is enough to put you to sleep in a nice way, to be honest. I'm not trying to say that as like, you know, she's boring or whatever, but she just has one of those voices that's so calm, and like it's the perfect story time before bed. Tracks like Oedipus are the cutest things. She has those little isms in her voice. You know what I'm talking about if you've heard a Regina Spektor song. She's just got the cutest voice ever. And to be fair, any album in this vein or in this style, really, you know, singer-songwriter, piano type albums really could be perfect for a list like this. I just brought up Regina because she is one of my favorite artists, and Songs is amazing. Similarly to Songs, we do have Ghosteen from Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds, the most recent album on this list. Of course, it came out like a month ago, barely even a month ago actually. I gave it a very positive review. I even said in the review, if you remember, if you've seen it, that this album actually clicked with me when I went on a late night walk, because it was just the perfect environment for an album like this. You've got Nick's just really harrowing, depressing vocals, honestly, just over these really soft new age instrumentals. Are so bare to the bones, and you feel sucked into everything he's saying. The poetry completely comes to life when you're just walking and you have nothing to focus on other than Nick's voice in the dark autumnal weather. It is just the perfect album experience for that situation. Again, for a list like this, you could exchange this Nick Cave album for Skeleton Tree or anything from the 90s, you know what I mean? You could pick or choose, but for me, Ghosteen is the go-to one. I could absolutely not do a list like this without at least mentioning a jazz album, because I think jazz is really perfect for late night experiences, to be honest. Chick Corea with Return to Forever, a wonderful jazz album from the 70s. My god, if you're looking for some 70s jazz music, or just 70s music in general, if you're one of those people that likes putting together a topster, and you're looking for 70s albums and you haven't heard this, you do not make that topster until you've heard this album. The beautiful vocals that come in on this album as well are just wonderful, and that 20 odd minute track is just phenomenal. Like, if you're looking for long songs, you gotta listen to this one, man. It's so fantastic. It's just such a beautiful voice. It often just sounds like birds singing. It really is just this leads on very nicely to the next album I'll be talking about, Out of the Blue by Blue Jean Tyranny. Yeah, I mean, similar things I just said about that last album fit for this album too. Definitely falls more into the category of like progressive pop, art pop type stuff though, as opposed to jazz, but I feel like it has a very similar vibe and aesthetic running through it as well. There's a very lengthy spoken word piece that comes at the end of the album too. Like, again, we're talking 20 plus minutes, and the woman's voice is just so good to listen to. Listening to her speak these very weird, strange things that are currently going on in that like timeline, that universe. Got a very similar feel to what you hear on I Troll a Megahertz from Paddy McAloon, which, if you haven't heard that album, that could also slot nicely into this list too. Next, I've got Telephone from Noname, an album that really worked well for me when I used to work at a pub, and you know, it would just be the perfect thing to put on at the end of every shift, because shifts would end really late, like 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. So I walk home, put this on, and yeah, it's just the perfect album to just really like calm you down. You start to feel quite laid back and chill. Noname on this album is just so soft and warm, and so are the instrumentals. And you know, anyone that's ever worked at like a pub or a nightclub or a bar or something, you know, you've got this high energy at the end of every shift. And you need something to kind of just like chill you out, because you're going to get home and you can't sleep straight away. Noname's Telephone was the one. So probably more of a specific late night type of listening album, but I still feel like it could work in any other setting as well. The next album I want to talk about is an album I feel like I don't even have to explain in a sense. You've got Joanna Newsom's Yeast. I don't know, there's just something about the album that just feels like it's perfect for late night listening. What else is there to say? It's got the expansive arrangements that just completely take over each song. You got Joanna's wonderful storytelling. You just feel like you're being sat down with your grandma and she's just telling you some old folk tales or something. I feel like any album that's just narrative driven over some really lovely instrumentals, very chamber pop type instrumentals, then yeah, you could throw it on this list really. Not much else to say on that one other than the fact that I guess, again, it grew on me more as I listened to it in that kind of environment. So I do feel like there's something to be said about that album and late night listening. And finally, with the last album, I'm going to mention Mountain Goats with Sunset Tree. It has become a huge favourite of mine over the past year. I think probably the best Mountain Goats album overall, actually. And it has everything that you could ever want from a Mountain Goats album. Fantastic songwriting, even some really catchy songs like This Year, while also remaining to be incredibly interesting lyrically. John's voice, similarly to someone like Joanna, is just one of those voices that you want to latch onto every word that's being said. And you can kind of listen to this album in two ways really, where you could just, you know, kind of tune out what he's saying and just have it on as really lovely background music, because it works for that as well. And again, for someone that may have had like a really long day, a hard day at work or whatever, this is the kind of thing you want in your ears, not something that's too heavy or too you know, hectic or whatever. And that is the list. Hopefully you got something out of this video. I know it's a bit random, but like I said, I wanted to switch things up, do something a bit different. I'm kind of doing the same thing for every video, so hopefully you got something out of this and enjoyed it. Please let me know what you would have on your list if you were to do something like this. The best albums that work for you, let me know what they are. And if you do want to suggest a list, by the way, there is a feature on my Patreon that allows you to get dibs on different types of lists, so have a look at that in the link below, and maybe you could be my next list. You could give me the idea for my next list. It could be you. Let me know. Have a look. I'm so bad at promoting that Patreon thing. I never know how to do it or what to say, but if you're interested, do have a look in the description box. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Have a good day. Goodbye.